So thank you for joining our third presentation. This one will be covering immigration and travel information. So if you've not joined one of our presentations before, my name is Jamie Surdich, and I'm the International Student and Scholar Advisor in the IPS office. And I'm also a DSO and an ARO. Oh, it looks like there's people in the waiting room. Let me just take off the waiting room so people can join. All right. So starting off, I will talk about some important immigration and travel documents. When you are traveling, the two main things that you will need to bring, no matter what your status is your visa and your passport. If you are an F1 student, you will need to make sure that you bring your I-20 with you. And if you are a J1 student, you will need to be sure that you bring your DS 2019. I added the bullet point in here, adding a travel signature as well, because in your documents, whether that's your I-20 or your DS 2019, you need to make sure that you have a valid travel signature before you enter the United States. So from a government perspective, travel signatures are good for a year. However, our department likes to advise and say that it's 6 months because once you hit that 6 month mark, people at the border tend to start questioning. So we always say to make sure it's more recent instead of just a year. And then finally, it's always a good idea to bring your I-94 travel record. And once you arrive at Michigan Tech, we will give you a handout of how to
हाँ
print
डैडी मेरे को
this
भेजो ना
record.
आपका बैंक स्टेटमेंट।
So starting off with the United States visa. So the United States visa, what this is your ticket into the United States. So once you are here, it doesn't necessarily matter whether it's active or not, but in order to enter the United States, it must be valid. So the second bullet point says, is it required to renew your visa? So you do not have to renew your visa unless you plan on leaving the United States and re-entering. So you can be here on an expired visa, but obviously if you were to go home and come back, you would need a valid visa. So if you come to Michigan Tech and you plan on not leaving during your time here, you're totally fine. You don't need to get it renewed. Especially this day and age now after COVID, they're letting in a lot of new people, and so visa denials tend to be a lot more increased than they used to be in the past. And so we always say that it's really risky to go home and renew because there's always that chance for it to be denied. So if you have an expired visa, we would recommend probably staying in the United States because we wouldn't want you to risk going home, getting it renewed, and it gets denied and you can't return back to Michigan Tech. Depending on your country, there may be different type of visas, multiple versus single entry. Multiple entry visas, as you can assume from the name, you can enter as many times as you would like on that visa. However, single entry visas is only one entry into the United States. So that's something important to note. If you have a single entry visa, you will not be able to leave and come back. So once you're in the United States, you would need to stay. And then finally, you may get a new visa at some point in your time here if you do a change of status and you will receive a new visa. So that's something important to note as well. As you can see on this visa on the screen, there's a visa type or class on the right-hand side, and it will say that right there. And so this person, for example, had a visitor visa, which is a B1, B2 visa. Passport. Hopefully, you guys all have your passports if you've applied to Michigan Tech. So, unlike the visa, you must have a valid passport to remain in the United States. So, if your passport is expired, you are out of status. And so, you will need to be sure that your passport is valid at all times. If you do need to renew your passport, if it will be expiring shortly, we normally say within 6 months, we would recommend that you go back to your home country because third country renewals tend to be a little bit more risky. And so we would definitely recommend going back to your home country instead. An important thing that we like to note, especially when it comes to applying for a social security number, is it's always important to cross-check the information that you have on your passport and your other immigration documents. For example, we want to make sure that your name that is written on your passport matches your I-20, your visa, whatever your other documents are as well. If you do need to have a passport photo taken while you were in the Houghton area, if you need to renew your passport, Walgreens is a local store that does passport photos, and the Houghton post office also does passport photos. All right, so moving into some other documents. If you are an F1 visa holder, chances are you have probably been given an I-20. So an I-20 gives a list of your program information, your personal information, how you've been funded, and many other things. So this is something that our department keeps track of as well as the government. So, like the passport, your I-20 must remain valid at all times while you are in the United States. So, as you can see from this picture, there's a program end date listed on the I-20. So, you need to be sure that your end date does not reach the current time, and that's because otherwise, if it is expired, you will be out of status again, just like with your passport. If your I-20 is terminated or deactivated, you cannot enter the United States. So you can only enter the United States if you're a current student and you're in active status, or if you're an incoming student and you're in initial status. So like all of you that are admitted to Michigan Tech but have not started classes at Michigan Tech, you are currently in initial status. So you are able to enter the country. It's very, very important that you update IPS, our department, if you have any changes to this document. So you can see that there's program of study information on here. So if you change your major, you need to let us know because we'll need to process a new I-20 for you. If your funding changes, for example, right now on this example, this person has family funds, but if the university ends up funding you, you'll need to be sure to let us know so we can update your records. And again, like I mentioned, you want to make sure that you keep an eye on your program end date because if you need a program extension, you will need to submit this request ahead of time. So that way we can do the extension before your program end date. We are unable to do program extensions after your end date. So you would be out of status and you would have to leave the country. So just be sure you submit any requests in a timely manner. And finally, not only in pertaining to your I-20, but your immigration status in general, you are responsible for your status. We are here to assist you. We are here to make sure your records are updated, but you are the one that's responsible to let us know of any changes. It is your immigration status, not ours. So be sure if you have any concerns or questions or any updates that are needed that you let us know. All right, moving into a DS 2019. I know a lot of you are probably F visa holders, so you probably do not know what a DS 2019 is, but a DS 2019 is the J1 equivalent of an I-20. So again, it follows the same rules where it must be valid at all times while you are in the United States. Again, you can only enter the United States on this DS 2019 if you are in initial or active status. Again, this is something that you will have within our office, so you need to be sure that you update us with any changes to this document. And again, if you do need a program extension, be sure to submit a program extension request to our department ahead of time, so that way we have enough time to do the extension before your program end date. Another thing to note is that the DS 2019 has different sponsors. So your sponsor may be Michigan Tech. However, there are other sponsors for a DS 2019 for students that are on J visas. We have a lot of Fulbright students that are at Michigan Tech. And so if you are a Fulbright student, you will have a Fulbright advisor that will be the one that is responsible for maintaining your DS 2019. So it really depends on who your sponsor is. It might not be our department that's the one that has your record. So that's something important to keep in mind if you're on a J visa. I know before I had mentioned the I-94 travel record. So the I-94 travel record is a record of your travel history, as you can tell from the name. So this shows that you have entered the country legally. As you can see from this example on the screen, this is an example of someone's most recent I-94. It'll show when you entered the country, it'll show the date that you entered the country, and it'll also show your classification in terms of your visa type, as well as your information such as your name and your passport information. So like I said, once you get to Michigan Tech, we'll give you a handout that includes the information on how to print your I-94. Once you do this, you should carry this with you at all times, so that way you can leave your passport and your immigration documents safely at home. A lot of students end up getting errors when trying to retrieve their I-94 travel record. And although we can try to diagnose the issues, our department is not the one in charge of your I-94. And so you'll need to reach out to U.S. Customs and Border Protection to get assistance and try to fix the errors. Again, as I mentioned before, when you print your I-94, you want to be sure that this information matches your information on your passport. So your last name or surname, as well as your given name. All right, I have some additional travel information. If you do, for whatever reason, like I mentioned before, have a change of status that is pending, we always advise not to travel while you have a change of status or anything pending, whether that's CPT, OPT, whatever it may be. When you have a change of status pending, the government can see this. And so depending on the person that you end up with when you're entering, they may decide that they're not going to let you in just because you're in this weird in-between area where you have a status, but you have another one pending. So we always advise not to travel when you have anything pending. When you are traveling, although the passport, visa, and I-20 or DS-2019 are the things that you must bring, there are additional documents that you may decide that you would like to bring as well. Like I said, it all depends on the person that you're working with when you enter the country. Someone might be having a bad day and get a little bit more strict compared to others. So you could bring, if you get a change of level, if you're moving from master's to PhD, you could bring your change of level information. If you're entering and you are on CPT or OPT, you could bring your job offer letter with you as well. If you are traveling while you're on CPT or OPT, you could bring a letter from your employer or your advisor saying that the travel has been allowed and approved by them. And then again, if you are on OPT, you could always bring your EAD card as well. And as I mentioned before about a travel signature, you must always have a valid travel signature on your I-20 or DS-2019. So again, like I mentioned, even though the government says a year, we always advise that it's valid for 6 months just to be safe. So now I know I talked about a lot of the travel documents. Now I'll talk about traveling to Houghton. Obviously, Houghton is your main destination, right? You're all here because you want to go to Michigan Tech and you're probably in the process of coming here. So I'll talk a little bit about that. As I mentioned before in our previous presentation, there is limited transportation options in our area just because this is a very small community and a lot of community members have their own transportation. So you'll want to make sure you plan accordingly when you are trying to come to Houghton. Another thing that we want to note is there is a place in Michigan called Houghton Lake, which is actually an 8-hour drive from Houghton, Michigan. So when you are planning your travels, be sure that you are coming to Houghton, Michigan and not Houghton Lake, Michigan. We actually had a student a few years ago that had arrived in Houghton Lake and they had to try to find a way to our campus. And so obviously you want to make sure you plan that you're coming to the right place. In terms of travel options to get to Houghton, what we would recommend is flying directly into the Hancock CMX airport. So how this flight would work is you would go from your home country into the Chicago O'Hare Airport and then to Hancock CMX Airport. So Hancock CMX Airport is about a 10-minute drive from campus. And the nice thing of the Hancock CMX Airport is that our department is providing a shuttle service for new students between August 8th and September 8th. So if this pertains to you and you're arriving during those times, you can just send us an email and I can provide the information so you can get that shuttle. It's only $20, but we will bring you to wherever you are residing so you can guarantee that pickup service and make sure you can arrive safely where you need to go. Otherwise, if you are arriving outside of those dates, we do have local taxi services as well. However, like I said, they're not the most reliable options, but they are options for you as well. If you are going from your home country to the Chicago O'Hare Airport, there is also an Indian Trails bus that goes from Chicago all the way to Houghton. This is an overnight bus, I believe, and it arrives in Houghton actually at the bus stop on campus at 7 in the morning. And so that is an option too as well. However, you would have to provide for your own transportation if you choose to pick that service. So what to bring? I know I mentioned this in our previous presentation, but since we're talking about travel, I felt it was necessary to include it here. Make sure that you do not overpack. Like I mentioned, we do have local grocery stores and shopping areas where you can purchase a lot of the things that you need once you get here. So just make sure you pack the essential items that you'll need immediately. So that could be things such as toiletries, any clothing, if you need medications, and other necessities that pertain to you. Some airlines that you will be on only allow for one carry-on and two stored away bags. You may need to pay additional if you bring more, so just make sure you pack accordingly and you don't bring your whole house with you. You can purchase a lot of things once you get here. And once you arrive and you have time to settle into your new residence, get some sleep. I'm sure you'll be jet lagged, especially if there's a crazy time change. Make sure you check in with our department. We are IPS, International Programs and Services. We are located in the administration building, room 200. When you check in with our department, you will want to be sure to bring your passport, your visa, and your I-20 or DS 2019, depending on your visa status. Once you arrive at Michigan Tech, we will also give you a handout that includes a mandatory checklist of things that you will want to make sure you update, but I've listed them here on the slide as well. Printing your I-94 travel record, I've already talked about what that is. You'll want to be sure that you do that once you get here. You will want to get your Michigan Tech Husky card from our library. If you are living on campus, you will want to be sure that you check in with housing and get your key for your residence. One of the immigration requirements that you will need to do is you will need to update your United States mailing address, so where you will be living in the local area, on your BanWeb account within 10 days of arriving. So this is a federal requirement to update this address within 10 days. So you want to make sure you do that. We would hate for someone not to update their address and someone from the government comes looking for a student and you aren't where you say you are. So definitely be sure that you keep this up to date at all times. As an international student, you will need to make sure that you have an approved health insurance by Michigan Tech. So if you have any questions pertaining to that, you can always reach out to the student insurance department. You will need to be sure you pay your student bill in order for your enrollment to be confirmed. If you do not pay your student bill, your classes will be dropped and you will be out of status. If you are a graduate student, you will need to be sure to submit your official transcripts and your proof of degree to the graduate school. So this isn't something that our department handles. We only handle immigration related matters. So anything academic will pertain to the graduate school. If you have any mandatory orientation sessions that are applicable to you, you will need to be sure to attend those. And then finally, we have a course through our department called the International Student Success Seminar, which is taught by our director, Christian. So you'll need to be sure that you register for that course during your first semester. So that is all I had pertaining to immigration and travel. So if you have any questions, now's the time to ask or put them in the chat if you have anything. Any questions? Bernard, I see you have your hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yes, I have a question.
Sure, what's your question?
Yeah, my interview is on Thursday, that's next week, 15th.
Okay.
And the start date is 29 for my program. Looking at how close the interview and the start date is, do I need to request for late arrival notice or something?
So the semester starts on August 26th. And next Thursday, I mean that's cutting it a little close. But from what I've gathered from the emails I've sent out, it seems like a lot of students are sometimes figuring out the day of their interview if they've been approved or not. So I guess it really depends on the situation there. If you are in administrative processing and it's getting to be a little later, I would probably recommend reaching out to the graduate school and then you can defer your enrollment to the spring semester. I know that the graduate school says to arrive by the first day of classes, which is the 26th. And so I don't know that they're approving late arrivals, especially if it's visa interview related. So it will probably be best if you don't hear day of to probably defer your enrollment. All right, and I have a question in chat. Can I attend appointment on September 12th with the current I-20 I am currently holding, even though I have deferred my admission to January due to the refusal in my first interview and I've reapplied? So if you have deferred your enrollment, again, the graduate school handles admissions, so I don't know for sure this part of it, but they may have issued you a new I-20. So if they did issue you a new I-20 for the spring semester, I would recommend bringing that to your visa appointment, because if you bring your current I-20 from the fall and you attend on September 12th, they might deny you just because the semester has already started. So if you have not received an I-20 from the graduate school yet for your spring 2025 semester, I would recommend reaching out to them. I will put their email in the chat so you have that, just to make sure everything is up to date. All right. And Felix, I see you have a hand raised. Did you have a question?
Yeah, good day. My question is, you talked about a letter, signature letter. I couldn't get that. So this is why I'm asking, if you can please clarify on that
Sure.
as well.
Were you asking about the travel signature?
Yes, correct. Travel
Okay.
signature. Yeah.
Yeah, so on your I-20 or DS 2019, if you have an I-20, it's on the second page. There is a section for travel endorsements. And so what you'll need on your I-20 or DS 2019 is a valid travel signature. So a DSO or an ARO, depending on your visa status, will need to provide that signature for you. And those are valid for 6 months. So right now, when you're entering the country, you're probably fine. However, that's more for if you're already here and you're planning on, traveling home for the winter break or spring break. You'll want to be sure before you leave to travel that you stop into our department and we'll get you a new signature. Just because it's one of those things that they require. You can have the same I-20 throughout your time here, but they really want that up-to-date travel signature. So anytime you leave the country, once you're already here, just be sure to stop in and see if you need a valid one. Does that clarify that for you?
Perfectly. Thank you so much.
Perfect. You're very
Appreciate.
welcome. All right, I have some in the chat. Is the end date on my I-20 the same as the end date for graduation? Also, if I graduate early, I have to inform IPS. So the end date on your I-20 is actually just an estimate of your expected graduation. So, I think they overshoot how long you would be here. So a lot of people end up graduating early. So like you asked in your question, if you graduate early, you will need to inform us. However, if you do apply for OPT, optional practical training, which is post-graduation employment. Once you apply for that, Michelle in our department will actually shorten your end date. So you won't have to worry about that. And if you end up going home, you can just let us know and we can complete your record and go from there. How can you get your I-94? So like I mentioned, once you check in with our department, we will have a handout on how to print your I-94. However, let me see if I can, I don't think we have it on our website. Let me just check for you really quick. But that is actually online through the Customs and Border Protection website, as I mentioned in the presentation. I can give you the link to that website and you should be able to see where it says get most recent I-94. But like I said, if you're not in the United States yet, there won't be anything on there because it's updated probably a few days after you arrive. So you don't have to print it the second you get here, but maybe a few days in. All right, I'm trying to do it in order of how people are raising hands and asking. So Eric, I think you may have been next.
Yeah, hello Jamie.
Yeah.
Yeah, so my question is a follow-up on the because my interview is also on the 15th.
Okay.
So you were saying if I get a decision on the day off and I'm able to make it before the 26th, then I'm fine, right?
Correct. Yeah, what we're advising as well as the graduate school is to arrive by the first day of classes. So maybe if it's a few days, you might be okay, but the reason is because we need to be sure that you check in with our department in a timely fashion, because we need to activate your CVIS record, your immigration record, the second week of classes. And so there's a few things that we need from students before we are able to do that. So that's why we say to be here for the first day, just so you have plenty of time and we have plenty of time to make sure you're activated.
Yeah, I do have another question.
Sure.
Maybe you may not be the right person, but maybe you can direct me to
Yeah.
who could help me. So, I have a loan, and the loan institution has reached out to me that they've reached out to my school concerning confirmation of my details, but they're not getting back to them. I don't know who I can contact to find out what's happening.
Right. So we do have a financial aid department on campus, and I know there is someone in their department that handles loans. So I will put their email in the chat, and you could probably try reaching out to them, and they can at least direct you into the right direction for that.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Okay. Is there any residential options available for the candidate who wants to bring his spouse? So I'm not sure if you're on the wait list for housing yet in Daniel Heights. I would recommend that. I know housing, especially if you're a family or, married, I know they try to prioritize getting people into housing that, it's more than just a student. So I would recommend reaching out to them. Otherwise, on our previous presentation, I did include a link on the PowerPoint to look at some off-campus housing options, so you could always look into that as well. All right. Rokia, it looks like your hand is raised.
Hello, Miss Janice.
Hello.
Hello, Miss Janice. You were talking to somebody about a query about I-20, about travel endorsement signature. In the second page, I have a travel endorsement. And where do I have to put my signature on the travel endorsement here in the I-20? In the second page?
So, the travel endorsement of the DSO ARO will be on the second page, but you will need to sign the bottom of the first page. So there should be a little section, I think it's the last line in the bottom is going to be where you'll sign it. So if you're a graduate student, Faye has probably also signed the first page, and so you'll just sign under where she did. You should see the section where it says signature and date.
Thank you, Miss Janice.
You're very welcome. All right. I'm so sorry if I mispronounced your name, but Bamiji? Did you have a question? I'm not able to hear you if you're talking right now. Okay, if you're speaking, I can't hear you. So if you want to send a message in the chat, I can refer to your question there. Obrifu, do you want to go next?
Yeah. Good afternoon.
What is your question?
Yes, I want to find out about the payment of the bills. I am on a student loan, and I want to find out, is it necessary for those who are going to pay the loans to pay the bills before my arrival, or I supposed to pay it before later?
Yeah, so on the Michigan Tech website, they have a list, let me just pull it up here, of when the due dates are for bills. And I think it should be up to date. Yep. So it does show when bills are due. They do have payment plans as well. So I did put the financial aid email already in the chat. And so if you wanted to reach out to them as well, they will be able to help you with, paying your student bill and confirming your enrollment. All right, so let me get another message in the chat. I have a few. My interview is on the 28th August, so I'll be there on the 8th of September. Please be noted. So I'm not sure if you will be able to arrive that late into the semester. Like I mentioned, if you do have a late arrival, it does need to be approved by the Dean of Students office. And I think that since the semester starts on August 26th, that may be too late. Let me get you the contact information of the Dean of Students office. Because you will need it to be approved. I believe you can only arrive like 2 or 3 days late before you need it to be approved. So there is the email for that. Due to the student protests in Bangladesh, the U.S. Embassy has been closed, but currently the situation is better and the embassy will be open next week. If I get an appointment before 20th August, will I be able to attend this fall? So that's kind of the similar situation as before, where I said it really depends on if you are approved or denied that day. If you are, you can obviously arrange your travels accordingly and be sure that you attend before the first day of the semester, even the first few days. And yeah, the deadline is the 29th of August. I think that's set by the graduate school. And so I would maybe recommend, I don't know if flights are refundable, but it might be best to book a flight if you do get a visa appointment, so that way you can possibly leave that weekend. I'm not sure if you'll also get your visa that soon though, because I know even once people are approved, it takes about 2 weeks to get the visa actually physically. So it really depends. I would say to keep an eye on it. And if you don't hear anything by that weekend, it would probably be best to defer. Because yeah, especially like you said, there's a lot of things going on in Bangladesh right now. So you might end up in administrative processing or something like that. What are the assurance of reacceptance when you reapply? This is because I have exhausted my 1-year difference option, but I have acquired my F1 visa. So that would be a question, again, for the graduate school. They handle admissions. I will put their email again in the chat because unfortunately, since we don't handle admissions, I'm not too sure of their deferral policies. However, if you do have your visa, they may be a little bit more lenient, even if they do have the policies. Obviously, like I said, they were letting a lot of people in after COVID. So now a lot of people are having to defer and wait for visa appointments. So, all right. Can I attend the appointment on September 12th with my current I-20 I'm currently holding, even though I deferred my admission? So I think oh yeah. So did you say I can go for the interview with the spring I-20? Yes. So I would recommend going to your interview on September 12th with the spring I-20, just because, like I said, if you bring your one from the fall, they'll see that the semester already started and they might deny it. So be sure that you bring your updated I-20 that you received when you deferred. If I have on-campus housing, do I still have to update my mailing address? Yes. So anytime you move in the United States, even if you're just going on vacation, if you want to get out of Houghton in the winter when it's cold and you go to Florida for a week, you still want to update your address. So no matter where you move in the US, it needs to be updated. Even if you're in that place for 5 days, you want to make sure it's up to date. Like I said, we would hate for the government to come looking for someone and you're not where you say you are. So make sure that's definitely your priority once you move. When am I supposed to pay for flex housing? The bill for this month from 15th to the end of this month. So I am not entirely sure about the flex housing bills. You could reach out to the housing department. I will put their email in the chat and they should be able to assist you with the housing question. I have a question about health insurance. Found an external provider whose plan seems to match the university's waiver criteria. So that will be a question for student insurance. They are the ones that give you the approval of any external insurance sources. I have put their email in the chat. So if you wanted to reach out with them. My I-20 is still valid for my interview on the 28th August. Yes, that should be valid still because it is for the fall semester. But like I mentioned, if you don't hear of your outcome on the day of, you likely will have to defer to the spring just because the semester will already have started at that point. What are the transportation options when arriving at the airport? Are you referring to the Chicago O'Hare Airport or the Hancock CMX? I'll wait for that clarification before I answer your question. Hancock. So like I mentioned, it depends on when you are arriving, but our department, like I mentioned in the presentation, we are offering a pickup service from August 8th to September 8th from the Hancock CMX Airport for only $20. I will put our newly admitted students link in the chat, and there is a section that says transportation from Hancock Airport to Houghton. MTU. And so you will get all the information about our pickup service there. Otherwise, if you are arriving outside of those dates, we do have some local taxi options that you could take. So if you just Google like Houghton, Michigan taxi services, you should be able to find one there. What is the last date I can defer my program to spring 2025? My visa is approved for fall, but I'm unable to attend. So that will be another question for the grad school as well, because they are the ones that handle deferrals and adjusting your admission. Any other questions from anyone? As always, like I have said in my other presentations, if you rewatch this presentation, you have further questions, I put our email in the chat. You can always reach out to us. I know a lot of the questions already that have been asked aren't something that our department handles, but even if that's the case, definitely reach out to us and we will direct you to the correct department or person that can assist you. But any other questions? I'll give it another minute for any last minute questions. And again, as I mentioned, this presentation will be posted on our YouTube channel as well as linked on our Facebook page. So if you want to refer back or you know a friend that wasn't able to attend, you can always pass along the link to them. And I will actually send out the link to our YouTube channel as well. So you have that. And we're kind of up and starting our channel as of recently, so we don't have too much on there, but we're starting to add more and more as we go along. There's the link to that. In case my visa is approved coming from Ghana, which travel route do you recommend? So I do not know the flights from Ghana. However, you could probably just do a Google search. In terms of once you're in the United States, you will need to fly into Chicago because the only flight that is into Hancock CMX is to Chicago. So honestly, if you just search like the city where you're from and say Ghana to Hancock, Michigan, that will probably give you some routes as well as, you know, the cheapest ones, quickest ones. But like I said, I'd recommend flying directly into Hancock CMX just because it's closest to campus and we don't have our pickup service from Chicago this year. All right, any more questions from anyone? Will there be a group chat for those attending the spring 2025 term? So in terms of through our department or what we're aware of, I am not sure of any group chats. However, if you are from a country that we have a student organization at Michigan Tech for, like for example, we have an Indian Students Association, an African Students Organization, they may potentially have a group chat. So let me just link you to the involvement link. So what the involvement link is this is where all of our registered student organizations are on campus. And so if you want to find one that is applicable to you, you can always look that up. Is there any pickup bus from Duluth? Not that I know of. I did mention the Indian Trails bus. However, I know that is for sure from Chicago, but I do not know about Duluth. Once you are in Duluth, you could look it up. You could either look up Greyhound or Indian Trails. I know Greyhound no longer comes to Michigan Tech, but Indian Trails, I'll put that in the chat. They may have a route where you can, you know, stop on the bus and it'll come there. What is the last day to register and pay for the classes? So I believe I sent that link in the chat prior, but here is the website from the Student Financial Services Center webpage that will give you all of the deadlines as well as registration. Are there any dining options available for a couple days after arrival? So I guess that depends on when you arrive. Once the semester starts, our dining halls will be open, but we do have local, you know, grocery stores and stuff like that. And it really depends on where you're residing and when you're arriving. But Michigan Tech, we do have a cafe available in the Memorial Union building. I think now that it's summer, they have a little bit of reduced hours, but they are still open during the summer. So you could go there as well. Any more questions? Otherwise, I will wrap up here and I will get that live stream recording posted on our social media. All right, well, I will end the presentation